the most successful people are those who know who they are and intentionally use the things they have to achieve the things they need to achieve, period.
Welcome to Mentoring Unlocked. Justin, welcome. Thank you so much for being our guest today on Mentoring Unlocked.
You're very welcome. What a pleasure to be here with you, and thank you for the opportunity.
What I find fascinating about you, Justin, is that the dual, almost like brain that you bring, both the very analytical, you have to be, as a technologist, you have to be very structured, analytical, results-oriented, large corporate organizations, big matrix and very complex change programs that you have led. And at the same time, you've throughout your career been absolutely dedicated to the human aspect of work. Yeah. You have trained and you're now certified as an executive coach. And I know that you've consistently kept that commitment, even in the busiest periods of time of your career.
Absolutely.
So I'm really excited to have you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's get into it.
Let's start with, I'd love to hear who as mentors have shaped your exceptional career.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, let me talk about mentoring a little bit more generically. So I kind of view mentoring on two levels. I view what I might call specific mentoring, where I need to develop a skill in a particular area.
Yes.
And then more generic mentoring. So the specific mentoring for me, early on in my career, I did an MBA, for example. Yeah. And I become deeply fascinated in strategy and strategy implementation. So I developed a great relationship with a professor at the business school, and he helped mentor me in best practice around strategy implementation. And that's really carried through my career as well. So that's a great example of kind of what I might call specific mentoring relationship.
Yeah, that's really development of a skill.
Right. And then a lot of what I might call generic mentoring.
Yeah.
This is really where I've had some awesome managers who have invested time in me in order to help with my development.
Yeah.
And I think a couple really kind of spring to mind. I spent a lot of my career with the European banks that National Australia Bank owned.
Yes.
And I had a fantastic leader there. I would meet with him probably on a weekly basis.
Was it formal? Were you actually meeting for mentoring, or was it quite informal?
So we engaged quite a lot. And one thing I want to draw out in successful mentoring relationships, I think, treat many of your conversations as mentoring relationships. Yes. So I encourage lots of people to have lots and lots of mentors. And we can talk about the difference between a formal mentoring relationship and kind of informal kind of mentoring. But in this particular case, I met on a weekly basis. And the focus was really on me, right? And what did I want to kind of achieve and how could he help me? Now, he was French, and so he was full of energy and passion, and he loved to kind of talk an awful lot. So half the time, it kind of felt like I just needed to sit there, pin back my ears, and kind of listen and absorb a lot of information. But he really helped to expose me to start to think about how others might perceive me, open my eyes to some blind spots that I might have, kind of think about the broader organizational construct, so that I wasn't very much just operating in my silo. If I wanted to be successful, I could go on and start to understand the org in a broader term. Yeah. And he would also then move into kind of sponsoring me. So another role that I took on.
Very important to talk about sponsors.
I took on a big role in my early 30s, leading technology infrastructure for a major European bank. Now, that was really me being thrown into the deep end. Now, that really came on the back of mentoring, because this leader had mentored me for a number of years. He had seen me grow and develop.
Yeah.
And to be honest, he probably had more confidence in my ability than I did.
Right.
And so when he left the organization, he kind of almost became a bit of a sponsor, and he sponsored me into this other role with this European bank. And I arrived, and wow, it was a steep kind of learning curve. But it was really on the back of the fact that he knew that I was ready because he had mentored me and he had that confidence that I could succeed.
So he had that confidence, whereas perhaps you didn't have it yourself.
That's right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to be thrown into that deep water to see if you could sink into it. And he knew I wasn't going to sink, right?
Yeah.
He probably knew I was going to thrash around a little bit, but he was there waiting on the banks, and he would still shout some advice and help me where I needed help.
That's amazing. Actually, I didn't know that about you, Justin. That's amazing. Can I go back to what you said? You said, sometimes you were just pinning your ears back and listening, but there were times where he really revealed something in you.
Yeah.
He exposed some blind spots.
Yeah.
And I guess helped you find your own answers.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what it felt like? What did he do specifically to generate that kind of feeling exposed and breaking down of biases?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, in order to get to that level of conversation, there needs to be some trust built between the mentor and the mentee. And also, I think it's worth highlighting that mentoring relationships develop over time. I see so often people come along and they'll say, "Hey, Justin, can you be my mentor?" Well, I think actually mentoring relationships need to develop. It's a bit like you saying, not maybe you, because people might take this out of context, but it's a bit like somebody coming to me and saying, "Hey, we've only just met, but next week I'd like to move in together." No, let's at least kind of get to know each other a little bit and see how this kind of unfolds.
Yes.
So
because it is deeply personal. Actually, it's really being invited into someone else's brain.
Yeah.
So, will you move into my brain next week as my mentor?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen that way.
Absolutely. And obviously, as people, we are somewhat defensive when it comes to feedback. So the more trust I have with my mentor, the more I think that they have my best interests at heart, the more open I'm going to be to that feedback.
Yes.
So he, for example, would expose. I remember early on in my career, I was always very achievement driven. I did some really great things, but I didn't necessarily think about the perception of others. And me marching ahead and trying to achieve all these things, I would look behind me and realize, hey, there's nobody with me. Because I just marched off kind of on my own.
Yes.
So he was able to expose that things to me and get me to think in that broader context.
Yes.
And because of the trust that we had, because I knew he had my best interests at heart, then I was able to take that feedback, work with him, and start to think about my leadership style.
I'd like to really deepen our understanding of what you've just said there, because I think it is absolutely critical. The extent to which we as humans are prepared to hear the feedback depends on the level of trust that we have with the mentor.
Absolutely.
I think that's so important. Can we go even? Can you tell me what happens in your brain? But I think it's the case for everyone. When you receive feedback from someone you don't trust, what's the difference there?
Yeah.
Why is one well received and the other not?
Absolutely. So first of all, I think all feedback is valuable. Doesn't mean that it's all right. And if I receive feedback from someone that I trust, I'm more likely to pay attention to that. I might not like it, but again, I'm back to they have my best interests at heart. If I receive feedback from someone that I don't know, that I have no trust, my immediate reaction is just to go into denial. And then depending on my mindset, I might actually, if I'm not feeling really good about this, I might really sort of go head to head with them and almost start to compete, which is not generally healthy. If I'm in a better frame of mind, I might start to think of, okay, let me collect some data points from elsewhere. I've had this bit of feedback. My immediate reaction is to deny that and go into a bit of the, what's that curve? The Sarah curve, shock, anger, resentment, acceptance.
Yes.
So I'm going to go through that curve. Sometimes I might stay in that shock and anger for too long. But I might collect some data points from others to say, hey, I've got this. Is that kind of right?
Yeah. So in fact, what you're saying is if you trust the person, you don't need other data points.
Not so much, depending on the depth of the kind of feedback.
Yeah.
What
do you think fuels the doubt about the feedback when it's given by someone who we don't trust? What's the immediate belief and reaction that probably goes on in our brain at that moment?
Everyone looks at the world through their own spectacles.
Yes.
They have their own view of what certain behaviors mean. So if you see me doing something, if it doesn't meet your standards or your view of how some things, you're going to give me that feedback. But that might not sit well with my own personal view of the world.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a good kind of example. Whereas if you know me and I've got that trust with you, I'm more inclined to go, actually, Maude's more in my shoes with this feedback. She's coming from a perspective of knowing me, and therefore it kind of lands. Oftentimes feedback is more about the person that's giving the feedback rather than the recipient of the feedback. And what matters to me, that's important, but if you balance those things up, so you know it's being considered from my context as well, that's when it kind of lands.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yes. So the mentor, not only you have to have established that trust, but it's about knowing and being confident that the mentor looks at things through your lens, for your purpose, for your benefit, from your context.
Absolutely. You raise another really interesting point for me here, which I see in mentoring an awful lot.
Yeah.
So oftentimes in mentoring, people are coming to another party and they're basically saying, I want to tap into your brain. I want you to download some information to me so I can go away and improve myself.
Yes, sure.
What I often see is people then moving into a space of going, gee, I admire Maude. I wish I could be like Maude.
Yes.
And my response is, that's awesome. Admire Maude, but you're not Maude.
You're yourself.
You are you.
Yes.
And so this is the real interesting balance in mentoring.
Yes.
I want to learn about your outcomes. I want to maybe understand how you achieve those outcomes. But then if I'm really smart as a mentor, I've got to get the mentee to think about, okay, how can the mentee achieve those same outcomes using the things that they have?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the phrase I always use is, the most successful people are those who know who they are and intentionally use the things they have to achieve the things they need to achieve, period.
Yeah.
Everyone has whatever they need to be capable. The danger with mentoring is people are saying, hey, be like me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not like me. So, I can share a story as well on that one, if that's helpful.
Yes. I'm particularly interested in, and I think mentors are listening to us.
Yeah.
I think you're touching here on something really important, which is, as a mentor, you've got to look at your mentee's context through their eyes, as if you were sitting in their brain, standing from their brain point of view.
Yeah.
Not only does it develop the trust, but also it allows you to really lead them on their own path, perhaps to similar outcomes to yours, but it's almost irrelevant. It has to be their path.
Absolutely.
When the mentor does that, the mentee develops the trust, they can hear the feedback and they can progress. So I'm interested to hear, as a mentor, how do you do that?
So it's being aware of your own biases, your own kind of filters.
Yes.
If you are not aware of those things, it's really, really hard. So what I always start off in mentoring, in many things, people start with the destination.
Yeah.
And if, as an example, if I said to you, hey, you've got to get to Singapore tomorrow,
Yeah.
what's the first thing that you need to think about? People generally would immediately go to, gosh, I want to understand what the passport requirements are, what the flight times are, how much the flight is going to
Which
cost.
company?
Right. All really important stuff. But everyone misses the fact that you need to know where you are now in order to get to Singapore tomorrow.
Yes.
If you do not know that your departure airport is going to be Sydney, Kingsford Smith, you're not getting to Singapore tomorrow.
I love it. Love it.
And so the same absolutely applies in mentoring relationships. Not only do I need to know my filters and who I am as a mentor, but I need to encourage you to deeply understand who you are. Because again, your path to success is by building on what you already have. And I don't want to shape you into another mini me.
I love this.
I want you to think about who you are.
I love this, because if the mentor has gone from Hong Kong to Singapore, how can they really add relevant value to you if you're in Sydney and you need to get to Singapore?
Absolutely.
And so maybe sometimes you find mentors who happen to have started from Sydney, but it's rare. That's such a great analogy. I love it. I love it. So you really need to understand where your mentee is.
Absolutely.
What does that? So away from the Sydney Kingsford Smith analogy, how do you discover the location of your mentee? How do you do that?
So first of all, I encourage them. I will ask them to determine and share who they are. I think, as you know, I'm an expert in Gallup strengths. So I encourage everyone to do some sort of baseline to understand who they are. Now, I happen to love Gallup strengths, but there are so many out there.
Principles are there. It's about understanding your strengths.
I'm always amazed, Maude. I think lots of entry-level talent are very open to this, but I find that many senior leads really have not taken that time to introspect. And we all talk about authentic leadership and all those things. Well, how can you be authentic if you don't actually know who you are, right? So I would be starting with some psychometrics. I would be looking at feedback. The most important thing that someone can do is journal, right? On a day-to-day basis. If I get to the end of the day and I'm feeling fantastic, why? What happened for me today that led me to feel awesome? Conversely, if I got to the end of the day and I'm oh my God, I never want to go through that day again. Again, what was going on? The more I know, the more I can construct great days. And then the more material I've got to bring to my mentoring or coaching relationships about, hey, I've now noticed that within myself, this particular thinking strategically or working with these people lights me on fire. However, getting into the minutiae of all these things, I'm finding that really disengages me. Well, now I've got some real kind of interesting data points to work with from a mentoring perspective.
That gives us the map, right? The map of the strengths and the areas that are not as strong, and the beliefs that actually are around those experiences, and that really gives you the starting point of your mentee.
Absolutely.
Let's go back to you, Justin. What do you get out of being a fantastic mentor, which you've just demonstrated that incredible skill that you have and passion for understanding people? What do you get out of it yourself?
It's a great question. I think as we go through our careers, we almost cross a bridge. I think in the first part of our careers, it's kind of more about us. It's about me. It's about my achievements, what I can kind of do. And then you start to reach a plateau, if you like, where you realize there's only so much change you can enable as an individual. And then it's really all about how do I work with people?
Of course.
Leading people is a privilege. And so if the focus starts to move from less about me to more about my people and my team and how can I help those, that is so deeply rewarding. The old adage of, if you want to find happiness, lose yourself in the service of others,
Yeah.
really
That's right.
comes true.
Yeah.
So what is mentoring? So apart from one, it's immensely satisfying and rewarding to be able to see others develop and grow.
Yes.
But as a leader, I find it takes the pressure off me. So if everyone is looking for me to be the smartest person in the room and have all the answers, right?
That's exhausting.
Huge pressure.
Yes.
And sometimes I see many leaders, by the way, and they walk into these big meeting rooms, they have everyone around them, and everyone's silent. They're just waiting for their leader to speak and tell everyone what to do.
Yeah.
And that's just compliance. That is not around helping those people to be the best that they can be.
Yeah.
So mentoring, coaching takes the pressure off me. It's really empowering for people. It helps people to step up and drives their self-confidence and helps us collectively build better outcomes. It also forces me to do the job of a leader, right? Which is around leading people, working on the strategy, around governance.
Yeah.
All the time that I'm stepping in and doing their job, so I've got a tech background.
Yeah.
If I'm writing the code or fixing the tech problem, I'm not doing my job as a leader.
Yeah.
So it forces me into my role as a leader.
Do you think all leaders need to be good mentors?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you're illustrating there.
Yeah, particularly with the, the flattening out of org structures. I think today, people, particularly the younger workforce entering, are not necessarily looking for a career for life. They really value their relationships with their leaders. They are actively looking for their leader as a coach, right? They're actively looking to buy into the purpose of the organization. They don't want to be micromanaged. And, people are not necessarily as wedded to an organization as maybe they once were.
Absolutely.
So if they don't like what's going on in an organization, they are much more open to going, you know what? I'm going to go and take a year out. I'm going to move over here. I'm going to go back to university. I'm going to do X, Y, or Z. So if as a leader today, I'm not really serious about mentoring, coaching, I'm not really going to have a lot of longevity in my team.
Retain your people.
And engagement is going to go down. And that's not good for the business.
You know what you've just revealed for me just then is a connection between mentoring at work and retention and the job of a modern leader, the job of a 2024 leader, because actually people come to work for growth, for personal growth.
They do.
And when they work for a leader who gives them that opportunity every day to grow, to come up with their own answers, to learn from experience, then they feel fulfilled. And actually that's what the world needs, is a style of leadership that reveals in people what they can deliver for the organization. We know that then it creates innovation and creativity and adaptability and agility, which in a very disrupted world is...
Absolutely. And it's also broader as well with that flattening of the org structure out. Matrix management is so prevalent. So, obviously going back in time, it was typical that I would work purely for you and that was kind of it. But now I have several different managers. And so as that modern leader, I need to be mentoring, coaching. I need to be walking that talk regardless of whether people work for me or not, because actually we're all just one big team and we should all be shooting in the same direction anyway.
Wow. Are there many CIOs like you in the world at the moment, do you think?
Look, I would hope that there are, and I would hope, there are many that will bring many different things that I have. I think there are probably a few that still have some learning to do in some of the less technical spaces. But, ultimately it's horses for courses as well. I have a view of what works for me and has worked for me. I happen to think that's superbly important.
I do too, Justin. I do too. Now, I've got a couple more questions for you. What do you think are the most powerful questions a mentor can ask their mentee? What are some of your, I'm on the hunt for the most powerful questions in mentoring. And so if you reflect back on yourself as a mentor, when you've really created that incredible spark of insight for someone, or perhaps a mentor who has asked you an incredibly powerful question that's been pivotal in your career. And insight on
Wow.
the amazing question.
And oftentimes, look, you arrive at these things.
Yes.
So let me probably take a sidestep for a moment, and then we'll come
Of
back.
course.
The two things that I think people can work on
Yes.
are their performance and their mindset.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
Everyone gets very focused on the environment and all the things outside of their control that they want to kind of change.
Yeah.
So I really try to steer people away from that. But I think for me, ultimately, this comes down to what is your why?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who are you?
Yes.
Right? Why are you doing what you want to achieve?
Yes.
And then another really interesting question is what you think you want worth wanting?
There we go. That's your question. Is what you think you want worth wanting?
Yeah, because lots of people don't think about the consequences.
Yes.
If I want to be a very senior leader and I'm fairly early on in my career, fantastic.
Yes.
What's the price to pay?
Yeah.
How much time am I giving up from my family?
Yes.
What's the opportunity cost?
Yes. Which really goes back to your mindset, doesn't it? Because if you really understand why you want it, you can interrogate whether that's really what you want, and whether your mindset, your beliefs about what's right or what's wrong, is actually more influenced by the environment. And you said that. Try and forget about the environment and focus about your mindset.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Because so many people, I think, when they talk to me around their goals, you rapidly get to a point you understand, hey, you're interested. Are you actually committed?
Yeah.
And there's a real difference between the two.
What's the gap?
Right.
Why are you interested? But not committed. Who or what is making you think that you're interested in?
Right. And oftentimes, if they're interested but not committed, it's because it was somebody else's goal.
Exactly. Yeah.
It hasn't come from them, which again is back to what is your why?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Absolutely. Awesome. One last final question, Justin. What do you think the role of technology is in creating that fantastic mentoring or leadership ability? Can technology help us humans to get to that level of leadership and mentoring and really, awareness and consciousness that we need?
Absolutely. So again, what gets in the way of most things is time, right?
Yes.
So
yes,
the more we can do to make things easy, simple for people, the better. We've got to take that time out of the equation, if you like. So that's no longer an excuse. Also, people, and I include me in this, we're fundamentally lazy, right? We need accountability partners.
Yes.
So again, from a tech perspective, the opportunity to capture insights, capture commitments, and kind of lock those in, that certainly starts to drive a bit of accountability. Now, do I think that we could replace the role of a mentor with AI in totality? No. Look, AI can absolutely ask the basic questions. The really interesting thing is, from a mindset perspective, oftentimes those that will get the most value from it are those that are not those that are prepared to kind of self-reflect and do that self-introspection. They're the ones who often really kind of need it. And so again, making it easy for those people who wouldn't naturally do those things, I think will kind of lift all boats. But tech absolutely has a major role to play here
in prompting and supporting individuals and holding them accountable for that introspection.
Right, absolutely. And just taking the friction out of the system, if you like, and I guess co-creating something as well. And also if we can find smart ways of measuring progress as well, which is often a real challenge.
Great ideas. Yeah. Well, Justin, thank you so much for being with me today, for taking the time. It's been so rewarding to listen because I've never really heard about your mentoring story. So we'll do a big shout out to this amazing mentor who inspired you to achieve more than you thought was possible and who has led you to this incredible leader. Thank you so much, Justin, for today.
Been a pleasure, Maude. Thank you so much.